Hi everyone, today we are back at Fistral Beach, and although this is, I think, it's at least the third video I think I've done here, maybe only the second, can't quite remember, but rather a different view. Check out the view off in the distance. There's actually a sea fret this morning, so just some localised fog over the sea, and it really has changed. You'll see in a minute when I've got my paints ready. You'll see that it's really changed the view. If you saw any of the other videos, then you know, a very different view, very, very foggy. And they actually shut the beach down in terms of letting people go in the water. There were some, you know, people who didn't obey those rules, but yeah, very, very different view. So I'm just getting my paints together. As you can see, this is the little satchel I take with me when I go to do outdoor work. And you can see the visibility really is very low this morning. Quick blast of the titanium white using the Atelier interactive acrylics again. Some Silurian blue. And I was hoping to, this is going to be a fairly short video, but I wanted to try and capture some of the atmosphere and the feeling of being down on the beach, because it's really quite eerie if you haven't experienced it before. Because the waves are still crashing in, you've still got all the usual noises, but the visibility, you know, beyond the initial breakers, there's almost none. You know, you can't see the horizon line. If there are any ships out there and so on, you certainly can't see them. Generally speaking, birds aren't flying around like they normally are. So some French ultramarine blues just gone onto the palette. As you can see, I don't always clean off my palette after each painting, because with the acrylics it just dries and then you can paint over the top. And the palette I'm using, as you've probably noticed, it's just a roller tray, a decorating roller tray. They cost about £2, I guess, something like that, at the local DIY store. And I'm using the artboards again by Dala Rowney, the mixed media artboards, A3 in size. And I've got myself set up on my little field easel there, and you can't see it, but I've got a couple of huge rocks supporting that field easel so that it doesn't tip over. My water bottle that you can, so I've got my water spray, the blue one, and then I've got my water pot also to the left of the easel. That's kind of buried in the sand a little bit to stop that falling over. And at the moment I'm just mixing up a combo of the Silurian blue, a little bit of cobalt blue and some titanium white. And although it's really, really foggy out, it was actually, this was filmed in the middle of summer, and it was really quite warm out, so I'm still wearing my hat, and you know, I had to keep things fairly moist on the paper, because otherwise the paint would dry out a little too quickly, a little more quickly than I would like. So rapid horizontal brush strokes here, put in the sky, and allowed that to fade as I went down towards the very, very faint horizon. So the visibility conditions were changing almost minute by minute, so I felt I had to work fairly quickly. So going a little bit darker for the sea. And I tend to set up a little area on the beach. So I've got my windbreak up, I've got my beach mats set down there. So, you know, I've got a nice bit of shade that I can sit in, but the easel itself can still be out in the sun. You can see I'm casting a fairly strong shadow on the sand, even with these foggy conditions. I don't know if you just heard that, but that was me puffing. I think I was probably just squatting on the sand, my feet flat on the ground, and I'd probably had enough of that after about 5 minutes. So I obviously felt the need to change position. So slightly deeper layer, deeper levels of blue going in. So there are some fairly subtle graduations in colour as we move from top to bottom on the paper. So they're all different varieties of blue at the moment. But now I'm mixing up something for the sand. So got some cad yellow in there. Got some, I think I put in magenta. Might have been a touch of cadmium red. But also some titanium white. And I've probably kept a little bit of blue on the brush. Probably didn't clean it too quickly. Although I did give it a good rattle in the old water pot. And you can see that's putting down a sand-like colour for the bottom section. So I've gone for the 2/3 rule here, in that my horizon line is about 2/3 of the way up from the bottom of the paper. And I'm keeping my brush strokes horizontal for the sand as well as for the sky. So I'm standing up now, heading partly to rest my legs and just searching for some more materials. So all of that painting was done with a flat brush, synthetic bristles, so it's quite soft. And I guess it's around about 1 inch wide, something like that. But now I'm switching to the 1/2 inch flat brush. And as you can see, I've picked up some blue and some yellow, mixing up a green. And now what I'm starting to do is put in an indication of the waves. Now, the waves obviously are constantly changing in shape and rolling in all the time. So it's a case of looking and looking and looking and then trying to depict some of the characteristics that you see. So what I'm doing here is keeping the brush strokes, they were vertical to begin with, where the wave is at its peak height. And then with the same colour, I use some more horizontal brush strokes. As you can see, that's what I'm doing right now. And I'm keeping some texture in those waves, and I'm curving my brush strokes. When I'm doing the up and down brush strokes, I'm curving those. I haven't got the angle of the easel quite optimized for the camera today, I'm afraid. But hopefully you can see pretty much what's going on and get a feel of what it's like to paint outside, out on the beach. And what I just did was put in, with that same darker bluey green colour, a kind of ripple line for the shallows, and I'm putting another one in now. Trying to capture that feeling of the waves lapping in and constantly changing shape as the different layers of water kind of roll in across the sand. Now I've mixed up a lighter blue, a not very thoroughly mixed mixture of a blue and a white, and I'm putting that on top of that shadow region for the waves in a rather haphazard fashion. You can see I'm just rolling and flicking the brush across the surface of the paper there. So I'm trying to simulate the white water, the froth of the waves, and I'm using the brush in this way because I find if I try and paint randomly, I end up creating a sort of a repeated pattern, almost subconsciously, which isn't what I want to do. So that's why I use the brush in that way. I try to let the brush do the work for me. And you can see that while I'm standing up and getting my paints ready and grabbing my brush, my eyes are still going back to the view repeatedly. I'm still looking, off at the view, even when I'm kind of taking a little break. Just adding a bit more sand there to the water bottle, make sure it doesn't fall over. Puffed again there. I don't know what's going on today. It's quite funny. Watching this back, I didn't realise I sighed and puffed so much. I was just squatting and kneeling on the ground. Need to work on my yoga a bit, I think. So now I'm coming back in with some pure white, and I'm using a similar technique to the one I used before. But what I'm doing right now is I just sprayed the brush itself with water, and now I'm tapping the brush to kind of get little flicks of paint spattered across the surface of the painting. And that's another cool way to be expressive, not get too tight and too fussy with detail, and hopefully try and create the illusion of water splashing and spraying everywhere. And I followed that up with a few slightly more precise lines and kind of, I'm doing some diagonal brush strokes at the moment and also letting the brush wander. So I'm definitely looking at what's going on out on the sea, but I'm working kind of instinctively a little bit as well, and just experimenting with what happens, really. Now I've grabbed that kind of sandy colour and I'm actually putting some of that into the sky. And I don't know how well it's coming out on camera, but what I realised was, and it was perhaps different earlier on when I started the painting, but I've got a little bit of magenta in there as well, I should say. But the colour of the sky, there was a very, very subtle hue, although you wouldn't know it with the amount of magenta I just put on the paper. But there was a very sort of subtle hue of magenta in the sky. I just added some white to that mix because I obviously put it down too strongly. Did you hear that moan? Obviously, my legs are obviously struggling, squatting on the sand. Or maybe I was kneeling. I can't remember. But either way, couldn't take it. So I was just standing up at the moment and really plastering on the paint. Well, I say plastering on. I'm not actually putting all that much paint on, but I'm just working the brush back and forth vigorously because I want a blended sky effect with the occasional addition of a little bit of water via the spray bottle to keep things smoothly blended. So coming back in with a blue mix now, still checking the view as I paint, quick spray with the water bottle, and I'm going back over that magenta area now just to soften the magenta and the sky. So what I find is when you look at a kind of a misty environment like this, initially you look at it and you think, oh, it's just grey. It's just grey. But of course, the more you look, the more colours you can often see, certainly down at the coast. And then when you try to recreate that in your picture, it's easy to sort of overemphasize those colours. So I just try to soften those in the sky to capture that subtle atmosphere. So adding a deeper blue now between the waves. And also keeping my brush strokes to suggest some sense of perspective and the surface of the water. And I'm blending this colour into the shadow regions of the wave. So I've got quite a hard line. You can see where I'm working now. There's quite a hard line between the shadow and the paler regions of the water in front. Adding in a little more white water on top of the wave. So even though I'm working quite quickly and moving my hands fast when I rattle the brush around, I still find this environment incredibly restful to work in. It's this weird combination of total concentration with almost complete relaxation because it's a lovely environment to be in down at the coast with the waves lapping in, and you can hear the water all the time. There's people walking their dogs off in the distance and stuff like that. But at the same time, you can be very focused on what you're doing. But you're out in the open air. I mean, it's tough to beat, really. Difficult working environment to beat. So I'm going to some deeper colours now. I'm putting in a little more definition in the foreground. So when the very shallow water comes in over the sand, you'll often see a very deep shadow, or relatively deep shadow, at the water's edge. And that's what I'm starting to do now. So I'm bringing in some wavy lines in the foreground, but those lines are crossing each other. They're generally diagonal in nature, but not always necessarily. Adding some variation in tone and colour now to that foreground area of water. And I don't know if you can pick it up on camera here, but you'll definitely be able to see it at the end of the video when I show you the high resolution version. On the bottom right of the picture, the paint is actually run in places, and I really quite like that for landscapes and seascapes, especially if it's from working outdoors, because I kind of feel it captures, a little bit of the essence of what went into the painting. This wasn't a carefully considered laboratory conditions studio based painting. This was done out in the wild, so I quite like it. I don't want the whole painting to run, but if there's a little bit of an area which is run and I feel it, generally speaking, adds to the painting, then I'll leave that in. So you may notice that when I spray the surface of the painting with water, I quite often move my hand across the painting very quickly. And I do that because I just want to add a little increase in moisture. I don't want too many droplets of water landing on the surface of the painting. I just did it again then. So I'm very much trying to mist the painting. The little spray bottle I've got, you can actually twist the nozzle to adjust the flow of water. And I set it so that it's as much of a mist as possible. But even then, I feel the need to kind of move the bottle as I spray. And generally speaking, that works quite well. So there's not a huge amount of detail in this painting. It's as you can see, it's done quite quickly, quite expressively. But I hope you can see that I'm capturing some of the feeling you get when you look out at the waves there. And I'm just standing up now, and you can see I'm flicking my eyes back and forth between painting and view. And what I'm thinking to myself at the moment is, have I done enough, or do I need to do just a little bit more? And I've obviously decided just to pop in some slightly deeper shadows under the white water there on the wave. And again, just softening and blending that shadow into the main region of water. I don't know how many times I moaned inside in this video. I do apologise. I need to get on my fitness program and intensive yoga and meditation. But as you can see, that's the end of that painting. And here's a close-up, so you can see on the right how the paint ran. And I really quite like that. Lots and lots of different colours in this one, but very subtle graduations of colour. And this is one which actually works really well. I checked it out on my website. If I blow it up as a big print and frame it in black, then it works really, really well. So there we go. That's pretty much it for this week's video. I hope you enjoyed the time at the beach with me, and hope you enjoyed seeing this little painting of a seascape in the middle of a sea fret, foggy conditions, low visibility come to life. If you did enjoy the video, please remember to hit that like button and leave me a comment. If you've got any questions, I'm always happy to answer those. But in the meantime, I hope to see you next week for the next episode of the Sunday Art Show. And if you're new here, please remember to subscribe to the channel and hit the notifications bell. I'll see you next time, and thank you very much for watching.